Hey guys, it's the funkyplaybrothers, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube. And today I'm reading part 5 of Five Nights at Freddy's Somniphobia. Last time we left off, Sam was going into the dream sphere more and more until eventually something happens to him. Mom, I'm gonna stay home from school today. He had strange, uncomfortable dreams, and he tossed and turned all night. He didn't understand why. He couldn't sleep very well anymore. It must have been the coffee yesterday at the mini mart. He'd stopped drinking soda and coffee for a reason, and now he remembered why. Mom walked to Sam and felt his head. "What's the matter? You're not feeling good?" He shrugged his shoulders. "I didn't sleep well last night. I don't have anything major going on at school. I'll email my teachers for today's classwork and make it up." Mom sighed. "Look, I'm sorry about last night. We were both cranky and took it out on each other. It's been a long week." He nodded his head. "I'm sorry too. I've just gotten a lot on my mind." "Honey, I know you've been missing Dad a lot right now." Sam's eyes burned. "It's been hard lately." "I know, Sam." She blinked quickly a few times. "A day off wouldn't hurt. Just take a break from the weird ball as well, okay?" "Sure, Mom. It's video games and burning television all day for me." She smiled. "Now, I know you're not feeling well if you're agreeing with me when you're giving the ball back to Rad soon," which was true, and it made his chest feel a little tight just thinking about it. He crossed his arms against the awkward feeling. She kissed his cheek. "Good. Take it easy and rest." A few minutes later, she left for work. Sam felt the familiar twinkle of guilt for lying to his mother. But she wouldn't understand the dream sphere was a miracle. Yesterday he had more lucid dreams with his dad, who from more memories that he'd forgotten. It felt like he was making up for the years they'd lost. He needed this. He needed his worries, his anxiety to disappear. Sure, the energizing part of the experience had completely disappeared, but that was okay. He could live with that. He went straight to the bedside table where the dream sphere sat. He hadn't eaten breakfast, but he didn't feel hungry. His stomach wasn't growling, so he'd be okay until lunch. This time, after he took his glasses off, he lay down on his bed and got comfortable. He set his watch for 20 minutes. He turned to his side and gazed at the sphere from his bedside table. He pushed the on button and the lights flashed across his eyes. Moondrop began to spin, waving his hands. Sam dropped into lucid dream state rather quickly. He was 8 and riding on the motorcycle with his dad. The motor echoed around them. It was the last ride they'd taken together. They were on a road trip, just the two of them. The weather was warm and the leaves were turning yellow, falling on the road. Sam had felt clamors that everything was all right. He was safe and protected with his dad. Dad pulled off to a resting stop with picnic tables and restrooms. Other families were sitting at the other tables. Mom had made them sandwiches and packed snacks and water. Dad set the goods out on the table for them to dig into. "Sam," Dad started as they sat eating their lunch, "I'm glad we can have these rides together." "Me too, Dad. You know, as you get older, I want you to experience things that are out of the comfort zone. Don't be afraid to try new things. Go on adventures with your friends. Explore the world. Discover what makes you happy and experience it as much as you can." Sam nodded with a mouthful of sandwich. "Okay, Dad. Above that, I want you to remember to make good and responsible choices. Be a strong young man and do what's right. When you make a choice in life, there will always be repercussions, good or bad, depending on the actions you take." "Uh-huh." Dad smiled. "You might not understand now, but hopefully you'll remember this conversation when you need to. When you're older, it'll be important. You'll be there to remind me later, right?" Dad chuckled. "I'll remind you, son." Sam frowned as he relived the memory. He'd done the opposite of what his dad had wanted for him. He'd become a cautious kid that barely tried anything new or adventurous. It all had started when he lost his dad from the motorcycle accident. He'd known motorcycles weren't the safest form of transportation, but hadn't thought anything bad could happen to him or Dad. But it had, so he tried to be careful from there on out. And whenever he felt out of control, out of his comfort zone, the anxiety kicked in. His dad had been his sense of safety. Without him, Sam had built himself a cocoon. He'd felt that if he made informed and cautious decisions, he'd be safe. But what he hadn't realized was that he was depriving himself of new experiences that could turn out okay. Experiences that could bring him some of that joy he lost when his dad had gone. He didn't want to be a disappointment to his dad. He wanted to be a kid that dad could be proud of. He wanted to feel secure enough to take actions and do fun things like go on spontaneous adventures with his friends, to ask a girl to the prom. Maybe he felt he hadn't been a strong young man who made good choices that his dad wanted him to be. Not when he was planning out each and every move in his life with the fear that something could go wrong or something bad could happen to him. The alarm on his wristwatch sounded. Beep, beep. Sam tried to reach and to click it off the dream sphere, but it was as if he couldn't lift his arm from his bed. Hey, he thought, what's the matter with me? The memory shifted. He was back at their old house. He sat at the kitchen table eating cereal before going to school. The television was on in the living room. Dad was saying goodbye before he headed to work. See you later, buddy, he told Sam and ruffled his hair with his hand. Sam nodded his head. "K, love you, son." Sam was too enthralled in the TV to answer. In the distance, he heard the motorcycle rumble. No, Sam said, trying to pull himself out of the lucid dream. He didn't want to experience this memory again. Memory altered. Sam watched as his mom pick him up after in elementary school to take him to the hospital. She was crying. It's your dad, Sam. There's been an accident. What happened? Is Dad gonna be okay? Mom hadn't answered because she hadn't known the answer. Sam's chest felt tight, and he was suddenly scared. More scared than he'd ever felt before. Stop, I don't want to see this. Sam shook his head, but he couldn't pull himself out of the lucid state. He could barely lift his arm, and it fell back to the bed. It was like his body was too exhausted to move. Finally, he swung his arm over just enough to turn off the sphere. He sat up and blinked and took a breath. Then his mom burst through his bedroom door. Sam jumped from his bed. Mom? Mom was disheveled and crying, but she looked younger still. It's your dad, Sam. There's been an accident. What? Sam's eyes widened. He jerked his head toward the dream sphere. Moondropper was still, and then the little jester slowly turned again as lights flashed from the sphere. Sam looked down at the bed and saw himself still in a trance. What's going on? What's happening? He looked back at his mom, and he was sucked into a memory. He was back to his younger self, watching his mom pace the floor of the hospital. She kept wiping her fresh tears as with a crusted tissue. The doctor walked into the room. His eyes were tired. Miss Baker, there was nothing more we could do for your husband. I'm sorry for your loss. Mom had crumbled before his eyes, and Sam had started to cry for his dad. Stop, let me wake up for real this time. With all of his strength, Sam jerked himself up from off the bed and slammed his hand down on the dream sphere's button to turn it off. He was breathing hard. A sheen of sweat had spouted on his forehead. His hands were clenched into fists, and he was trembling. He looked at his arms and opened his hands. Was he really awake this time? He rubbed his face and he felt awake. He stood up, but he was weak and off balance, so he sat back down. He held his head in his hands as it throbbed with an ache in the center of his forehead. Both of his eyes stung. His mouth felt dry. He wasn't sure how long he dreamt, but had been over 20 minutes. He had set his alarm. Something was definitely wrong. Sam realized. Since using the dream sphere, his sense of reality was blurring. He thought he'd awake from the dream state when he really hadn't. It was like his control was slipping away. Not only that, but he was changing. He wasn't breaking promises and skipping school. He'd been irritable with his friends and with his mom. He was lying to everyone. The urge to use the sphere was always there. When he was at school, when he was lying in bed at night, it was as if he couldn't stop using it, couldn't stop thinking about it. This isn't good. His dad warned him about making responsible decisions, and it was time to start. He had to give the sphere back to Red today. He forced himself up. He walked to the mirror, and then he did a double take. His eyes were bright red, in the outer corners. He moved closer to the mirror. "Oh my gosh," he whispered as his pulse fluttered. There was blood in both of his eyes. He'd read about blood vessels sometimes breaking in the eyes when strained or irritated. He paced back and forth for a moment as his chest tightened. What was he going to do? Would his mom say? Would she blame the sphere? "It's okay," he murmured. "My eyes will heal. I just have to get the sphere back to Rad. I have to get it back to normal, and then I'll figure out something to tell Mom so that she doesn't freak out." He took a breath and went to the kitchen to make himself a healthy, gluten-free, dairy-free chicken salad with fresh fruit. He wasn't hungry, but he forced himself to eat. And then he showered to wake himself up. He put some drops in his eyes just in case it would help. He ironed his shirt and pants and got dressed, then grabbed the dream sphere and headed for Rad's house. It was time to let go of Moondrop's dream sphere for good. Sam knocked on the front door of Brad's house, but no one answered. He heard Fruit's deep bark, and he knocked again. Sam tried the handle, and the door opened. Oh, someone had forgotten to lock the door. Fruits came to the threshold. Woof, woof, woof. Sam held up a hand. "It's okay, boy. It's just me. It's Sam." Bruce tilted his large head. He seemed to recognize Sam as he then turned and ran or waddled off. "Rad, you home?" Sam called out as he walked in the house and closed the door. No answer. "Hello, Mrs. and Mrs. Dawson? It's just me, Sam. I came by to drop something off for Rad." It didn't seem like anyone was home. Sam glanced at his watch. The guys had just gotten out of class. He was too early. He took out his phone and dialed Red. "Hello? Hey, Red, I'm at your house. I'm returning the dream sphere. Sam, I wondered where you were today. Did I forget to lock the door again?" "Yeah, looks like. My mom's going to freak." "That's cool, though. We've got to do a study session together, all of us. So kick back and wait for us. I know Jules is ready for a return with the dream sphere, with the sphere too. You guys are heading here now? Should be there in about 25 minutes. Go to drop off a paper to the teacher, and then we're coming to my house. We'll see you there, okay?" "Yeah, sounds good." Sam clicked off the call and set the sphere on Rad's coffee table. He took a breath and sat on the couch. He started to tap his fingers on his knees as he eyed the sphere. In the quiet of the house, he thought he heard the dream sphere vibrate. He picked it up and it felt warm, or was that just his imagination? He shook his head and set the sphere back down on the table. He crossed his arms, then uncrossed them as the lure of the sphere seemed to pull him in against his better judgment. He stared at Moondrop. 25 minutes. I think that's perfect time for one last experience with you." His eyes stung and he blinked. His emotions were a little all over the place. "Just once more. I don't want my lucid dreams with you to be when I lost my dad." Then he gently rubbed his eyes underneath his glasses. "I want it to be good. Actually, I want to be best one ever." He stared at Moondrop as if the plastic figure inside the globe could actually hear his request. Sam rolled his eyes. "You can't really hear me, though, right?" He didn't set his watch. Brad and the guys would be here soon to bring him out of the dream state. He took off his glasses and set them on the table, then lay down on the couch. He switched on the dream sphere and gazed into the bright spinning lights. He started to think about school and remembered what his dad had said. "You know, as you get older, I want you to experience things that are out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to try new things." So, guys, thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow us on Twitter at the Funky Play Bros. Follow us on Facebook Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Funky Play Brothers. Support us on Cash App at the $sign Funky Play Brothers so we can have more unboxings, more taste tests, more reading Thursdays, and for support. Thank you for watching. Bye.